Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of the Aftermath series. Let us waste no time at all and dive right into this week's episode of Critical Role. Yeah, that was a rough one. This was the first episode in quite a long time, maybe even the first in the campaign, I can't quite remember, that we've had an entire episode that was combat. There was a little bit of downtime between the initiatives, but for the most part, this entire episode was just non-stop fighting. And now normally, I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of combat. I feel like it sometimes drags a little bit. There's not usually a whole lot that happens. And the past couple of fights haven't been too terribly fatal. And with two clerics in the group, I honestly feel like the party is pretty safe in combat. You know, even if one person goes down and starts having to roll like death saves and stuff like that, I'm still haven't really been that worried because there's two clerics. The chances of them dying are relatively low. However, when there's something like this episode that happens where it's fight after fight after fight, and each fight was fairly challenging and deadly in its own way, which caused the spellcasters of the group to burn through their spell slots very quickly. And so, leading up to that final battle with that enormous fiend, all the spellcasters were relatively tapped, and towards the end, when things were getting very dire, barely anyone had any spells left. And so, needless to say, this episode's combat had me on the edge of my seat, heart racing the entire time, because multiple members almost died. And one of them, Caduceus Clay, technically did die, but thankfully, through the use of the Revivify spell, he was quickly brought back. But let's talk about that for a second. So Caduceus Clay is our Grave Cleric who is all about the balance of life and death. You know, death is just another step in a long journey. So I don't know if we've ever had Caduceus's real thoughts on death for himself, but I'm under the belief that he would be accepting of death and embrace it because he knows it's just a natural part of the journey of life. But the curious thing about his experience is that when he went down, he had sort of a vision telling him that he was on the right path. And this is important because we know a while ago, back when the party was in the Menagerie Coast and the Lucidian Ocean, that Clay was having sort of second thoughts and concerns about being in the group and if he was on the right path. Now, since then, we've seen him sort of come to terms and believe that he is on the right path, but he never really had any confirmation until he died. So it's just interesting that our beloved Grave Cleric had to die in order to receive this enlightenment from the Wild Mother. So we'll have to see if he has anything to say about it, or if we get some sort of an inner dialogue in the next episode. Overall, in this combat, I believe there are many conversations to be had, but I don't think all of them necessarily need to be negative. They did accomplish an incredible feat with closing off these rifts and defeating these extremely powerful creatures, and that is nothing to brush off. I, for one, am proud of the entire party for their accomplishments. It did get very close at times, and the dice were not in their favor, but they still managed to pull through just barely. But now there's another aspect of that fight that I want to sort of talk about, and that's Caleb being charmed and then turning on the party. Now, we know that Caleb does want to become more powerful, but we also know that he does fear his power over the fire. He feels he might lose control. This was sort of touched on a little bit. It is a little bit of speculation. We know that Caleb was concerned with his abilities because they led to the downfall and death of his parents. And we also know how much Caleb deeply cares about this group and how much he wants the group to stay together, but he is also concerned about their well-being because of the dangers he himself puts them in because of the people that are after him. So because of all of this, I believe what happened to Caleb in this episode and the party is seriously going to mess with his head and have a long-lasting impact many episodes to come. Especially since the whispers in his head were telling him that his friends were betraying him and they shouldn't be trusted. The people he's been traveling with are trying to kill him. Now obviously Caleb knows that this was simply a charm effect, but that still has to do something. That still has to psychologically mess with someone. And so with all of this going on, this internal conflict he's been dealing with, and maybe even finally coming to terms with accepting these people into his life, this happens. He's forced to attack the people he's been with, the people he calls friends, maybe even family. A truly, truly heartbreaking moment for not only Caleb, but the party as well, because they want Caleb to feel welcome. They know that he's going through some dark times and some serious struggles with these skeletons in his closet. Just so much emotion swirling around, leading up to this awful moment, which is why I do believe that this is going to have some serious impact on Caleb. And just adding on to that sort of emotion, the fact that so many people almost died in this fight, there's going to be some serious conversations to be had in the next episode, I certainly hope. Especially with the imagery of Bo sort of beginning to tear up, because this could very well be the end. You know, Ford running back in because he was like, you know, we're all in this, you know, we're all gonna die. They were pretty much all thinking they were going to die, and so they were just giving it their all, trying their damnedest to make sure they can get out of it alive, even though they really didn't believe they could. Which just really goes to show how much this band of misfits deeply care about each other and deeply care about their own survival. They're just doing everything they could, trying to break Yasha out of that charmed effect. That is also going to have some serious impact on Yasha, because Yasha is sort of the outsider of the group along with Caleb, in the sense that we don't know too much about her. She did let Jester and Clay in on her past, but that's about it. She's still sort of seen as this outsider of the group. And so the fact that she took a pretty big part in the almost death of the entire party is probably going to mess her up as well. So just the emotional importance of this fight. I know I said it before, but it's seriously going to have a lasting impact, I believe. Now, it would be really funny if the next episode they just brush the whole experience off and go about their business, but I really don't think that's the case, considering everything that happened this past episode. And going back to Caleb turning on the group, that sort of felt like some weird, like, dark foreshadowing in like an alternate universe, or maybe even in this universe down the line, if Caleb decides to betray the group, if it means he can achieve his ultimate goal of controlling and bending reality to his will. But let's not think about it, because that is a very dark, very terrible, possible future, but we'll just call it an alternate universe for the sake of all of our sanity. But with all of those fights concluded, they have, I believe, sealed all of these abyssal demonic rifts, whatever you want to call them, and they have found the source that was causing them. And so not only do they potentially have a lot of gold, they do possibly have a favor from the queen herself. So there's a lot of interesting pathways ahead for the Mighty Nine. But let me know all of your thoughts on this extremely intense episode in the comment section below. And with all of that being said, we are going to wrap up. Stepping away from the episode, I have some extremely exciting things on the horizon for you guys. I just want to mention a few of them, just to give a little teaser of what's to come. I do have some potential music, custom music, being made for my channel, which I'm super excited about. I'm talking with one of my amazing friends who is also a writer and composer of music. Maybe we can work something out. It'd be absolutely fantastic if we could. And the other thing that is exciting is I'm working on some sets to be built. So instead of this space background, I'll actually be sitting on a professionally made set. Now, these two different things are in the very early stages of development, so don't expect them anytime soon, but I thought I would share this exciting news with you guys because I'm extremely excited about that. But besides those things, there are some other very exciting things on the way, but I'm not too sure I should share them yet because they are even in the earlier stages of developing, so I'll give you more information on that when they progress further. And now, I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will see you all next week.